all the people on our internet as people are working from home in my house. Yeah, all right. Well, I'll admit people as they come in, but hi everyone, my name is Maggie DeSanta. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm the executive director of Bleed Shamelessly and the co-president of the JMM Gender Equity Association. The other co-president is Melanie Golden. She's also on this call. Thank you so much for joining us today on our environmentally friendly period product panel. This is really such an important conversation to have when it comes to menstrual equity and how we can all be more sustainable when it comes to our periods and just kind of feminism in general. So I'm super looking forward to having this conversation. So today we just wanted to kind of shine a light on this issue and encourage everyone to engage in the conversation, as I think when it comes to menstrual equity, it's not talked about enough. So to start, I want to let all of the people on the Gender Equity Association team who have been working hard on all of the projects that we've been doing introduce themselves.
Yeah, my name is Veronica. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm also part of the JMM Gender Equity Association.
Hi, my name is Ashlyn. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm also part of the JMM Gender Equity Association.
Hi, my name is Amy, and I use the she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm also a member of the JMM Gender Equity Association.
Great. So basically, to start, I would like to kind of give all of the panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves. So I have like everyone's bios, pronouns, and names up on the screen. So if once it gets to you, you want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your efforts, your work, anything that you're interested in telling the group. So Rahma, would you like to start?
Alrighty, hi everyone, my name is Rahma. I use she, hers, hers pronouns, and I am the current Miss Teen World America Wisconsin, and a part of my platform is really surrounding women empowerment. I currently work with an organization called Operation Period, where I am the Director of International Affairs, and we currently have projects going on in Kenya and Somalia where we aim to provide reusable period products, advocacy with their governments, and education to females surrounding the female biological cycles and overall menstruation.
Excellent, thank you so much. Nayanka?
Hi, I use she, her, her pronouns. I'm a recent Temple alumni with a BA in advertising, and I've been studying period poverty and Black women health disparities. And I started BloodyBtchs along with Zoe.
Awesome, thank you so much. Zoe?
Hi, I'm Zoe. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am a co-founder of BloodyBtchs with Nayanka. We kind of came together over a year ago now to try to help with menstrual equity, and my efforts are more along the line of sustainability. I also run Zero Waste Malta, which is in Malta, doing beach cleanups and things of that nature. So yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Nadja, would you like to speak?
Yeah, hi. So I work with an organization called CouldYou, and one of our main initiatives is CouldYou Cup, which is a menstrual cup, obviously. Well, it's not that obvious. And we distribute the menstrual cup along with education about menstruation, consent education, and just like body image issues. And we are currently in Mozambique, Ghana, Uganda, Liberia and Nigeria, Cape Verde, and Mexico and the US. And so we distribute the cup along with a lot of education because we know that there's so much stigma. We always talk to the boys and the girls. We always talk to everyone. I normally live in the US. I came to Sweden about 10 weeks ago and I got stuck because all my flights were canceled.
Yeah.
So I guess I live in Sweden now. But
yeah, thank you. All right, and Ellie, sorry if photos aren't showing up, but.
Hi, I'm Ellie von Wellsheim. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am the founder and director of an organization called the MoonCatcher Project, We make reusable, washable menstrual pads for girls living in poverty throughout the world. And in the United States, we also collect disposable menstrual products for people living in shelters, for food pantries, for people in need here. We are in over 22 countries and have...
I turned off the video.
I'm sorry. We have, we're in 22 countries and we have sewing cooperatives in 4 countries with 13 cooperatives where we employ women to make our menstrual kit, and so they're paid for it, and then our product is given to girls for free, along with a menstrual management and reproductive health curriculum, which we also give to the boys. And then we bring the boys and the girls together to talk about menstruation, about puberty, about treating each other well, about gender issues, about the environment.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Jane, would you like to speak?
Hi, my name is Jane Hope. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the marketing and communications manager for ISLE, formerly known as BloodyBtchs. We've been in business since 1993, so that's where we get our nickname, the OGs of sustainable menstruation. ISLE sells a collection of reusable period products and pads, underwear, and cups. We are a social impact business, so we have a number of initiatives from policy and lobbying to government, donation programs, green business initiatives, supply chain management, and carbon reduction initiatives that we use to create products that feel great, outperform disposables, and are gentle on the planet.
Yeah, thank you so much. Awesome. And last but not least, Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin. I use any pronouns. She, her is fine. I am half of the team that founded Bleed Geeks. Ezra is my co-founder, and they use they, them. We hand make our pads. We primarily make pads. We also sell reusable bags. They're great for carrying the pads, but also they're a very simple entrance point to folks that are wanting to adopt more sustainable habits. And we focus on making things comfortable, affirming, and just reusables can be pleasant in a way that disposables, I think they're a great point of change.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. And once again, thank you for everyone for coming and speaking about your experiences. We have a really awesome group of people who have a ton of different backgrounds and experience when it comes to this issue. So I'm super excited to start talking about it. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen just so we can all kind of see one another and, you know, it's less impersonal. Yeah, so basically, Veronica, if you want to kind of take it away.
Yeah, I jumped in a little too early there.
No, you're good.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. We're going to start with our conversation. Any one of you can jump in at any point if you have something to say. A reminder that if you're not speaking, please mute your microphones. And if you're in the audience and have a question, you can hold it till the end. We will have a Q&A session at the end.
So to start, Erin, if you'd like to start, and then people can follow. What are your specific efforts in terms of sustainability and menstrual equity? And how have you and your organization worked towards combining the two?
So specifically, we are encouraging and empowering people to switch to sustainable options. Primarily, we do this by manufacturing things that encourage people to change. Part of this is there's making things comfortable, and there's a lot of different design parts about that, but a lot of what we do is focus on creating things that affirm who we are as opposed to what we are in terms of like just the equipment that we have. When we started this, we definitely started off on a gender inclusive foot, because a lot of the very gendered terms that people use to refer to cloth pads were very off-putting, and we're like, we need to restart from the ground up. But that's come such a long way that it's no longer even something that I have to explain very often. So I've got, so like here's a licensed one. So we use a lot of prints. This one's a licensed print. Anyone can find it in Joann's and whatnot. But we also do a lot of artist prints where people see things that relate to them. So it improves your quality of life because it relates to who you are. It's very affirming, especially for people who are struggling with dysphoria. And it's just, they bring a smile to your face, which I have never said about a disposable product. And they just make your life better in that way. So that's really, by changing that experience, I think is how we're focusing on helping people switch.
I can go next. So with Operation Period and my own nonprofit, Sis Squad, that are teaming up together to have initiatives across East Africa and parts of India, we really focus on breaking the taboo that is the biggest barrier that we have with the menstrual product, especially the reusable one. And one thing I had to do was I had to reflect within myself, since I am East African, what would my mother be okay with? What would my grandmother be okay with? And one thing I really discovered was the menstrual underwear, or like there's another design that is more of a cloth, like reusable product. And we are really pushing those two different types of products to make sure that they have access to those. And we also educate them in a way that they realize that it's totally okay. It's not an issue if you're menstruating, and it's okay to go ask your parent, hey, can I have a product? Can I wash my product and hang it on the clothesline? Because I know even for me, when I lived in Somalia for 3 months with my grandmother, hanging my regular underwear on the clothesline was such an issue because it was like too taboo to even be out there on the patio. So we're really pushing for a more cultural change in those areas instead of just trying to push products that they don't use. We really have to focus on the issue behind why menstruation is such a taboo topic.
Can I go? So, hello? Oh.
You can go.
Okay, sorry, I just didn't know. So we work a lot around just the stigmas too. Like we actually have a music video about menstrual cups it's all in Portuguese, but it's with subtitles. We have an animation, a super cute little animation that we broadcasted on TV in Mozambique and Ghana. We have some like ambassadors in Africa and Ghana and Mozambique that are all amazing. Like they're role models. They have like a huge following and people look up to them. So we talk to them and have them spring the message because people listen to them. And then we go out into the school, and like I said, we talk to the boys and the girls, and we just acquired our own menstrual cup mold, so that it will all be made in America at a lab that is ISO and FDA standard, which is huge. It's a very important step in our process. And then we have the bags that they come in. They're all made by marginalized women in the countries we are active in. So in Uganda, we employ former child prostitutes that are being transitioned out of prostitution by another nonprofit that we work with, and we employ them to sew the bags that the cups come in, so that they then have an income other than prostitution and can get out of it, because that's obviously one of the issues with getting out of it. So that's some of what we do. And then we have an event for Menstrual Hygiene Day. We have an event a virtual event where the theme is it's normal, period, because it's normal, it's natural. And in so many parts, even in the US and Sweden, like men are, like you think that like we're supposed to be so much more like forward and like we've come so far, but like when you start talking about it, you realize that so many guys and so many girls and guys are still afraid to talk about it. And yeah.
Absolutely. Ellie, do you want to chime in?
Sure. In terms of sustainability, that was always a real concern for us in terms of making something that could be used and reused, it could be washed, but we're dealing with a lot of countries that are have a lot of poverty and a real problem with water. So what we ended up coming up with is something that could be washed with about a cup of water. So we give a kit, comes in a pretty little bag. All the bags are different fabrics. We make a pad that can be worn without underwear because so many of our girls don't have underwear. And we make the pad itself a rectangle so that problem of being embarrassed to hang it outside, which though we talk about it a lot, we talk about changing the language of menstruation and try to talk about how it is normal. It's not something you should be embarrassed about. But I'm not going to ask that 10-year-old, 12-year-old little girl in Kenya or Uganda or wherever to be the person in her village who's willing to put something out on the line that still looks like a menstrual pad. So we make it a rectangle. It looks like a dishcloth. It looks like a rag. It looks like a washcloth. And she can wash it really easily because we give her a little, let me see if I have one here. We give her a little bag like this, which is made out of ripstop nylon. It has a rubberized interior, so it holds water. So you can put your used, and we say used, we never say dirty, we try to change the language so that people don't think about menstruation as something that's ugly and dirty. And I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here. But you can put your pad in here. You can put a little soap and water in here. You can use the Velcro to close it up. And then you can wash it, a little manual hand washing machine, hang it on the line in the sunshine to get it more sterilized. And you can use it over and over and over. And we talk to these girls about it. We talk to the boys about it. We show them how to use it. We talk to them about the environment. It was such a concern of ours that there's no garbage removal. There's no way to get rid of all this stuff that we shouldn't have in the United States either. And so companies that wanted to give these big supplies of tampons and pads, well, yeah, but then what? What are they going to do with them next? So we made something that could be washed over and over and over.
Awesome.
That's really awesome that you took into consideration, like, you know, what people need there and the stigma and like listen to their voice and what they need. I don't know.
Yeah, I love the fact that a lot of you are doing things for people in the United States. But what I found, and I'd love to hear from you if I don't have this right, but what I found in my community is that if you live in a homeless shelter, you can't wash something out because you're sent away during the day and you only can go there at night, which means you have no place to hang anything up to dry it. So what we do is we collect disposable things because it's not possible for them to get to a laundromat or get to to hand wash things. So, but we want to give people something because, as we all know, food stamps don't buy menstrual supplies, and yet there's so many people that really.
Yeah, we'd love to speak on that. Oh, sorry. Oh, Nayanka, you do.
Zoe and I are BloodyBtchs, but that's something Zoe and I actually were running into as we're a Philly nonprofit. And we realized we had to segment our efforts and our language in regards to different communities, and just we had to look at it as poverty in the United States is different than poverty in other countries. And like you said, there are ordinances in Philly where you can't wash reusable products in laundromats. Homeless shelters don't, and if they do, can only provide you a certain amount of menstrual products. And so it's like we had to take all this in consideration. And although we want to give people that are in deep poverty situations in lower income communities, these reusable cloth pads and reusable underwear, there needs to be education behind that and understanding. And there is that thing they need it now. That's their relief. And it just really goes deeper into the situation. So what Zoe and I are trying to do now with the donations that we're collecting is we're trying to, get these people the products that they need. hold on, I said these people. We're trying to get those in our community the products that they need, but we're trying to get them, you know, like the more healthier products, like the organic brands. And like, yes, it is disposable, but at least it's a step up
Right.
from what they're used to. And then, you know, by doing that, we can kind of build up and start trying to, you know, figure out the other issues like the water and then like the laundromat and other stuff. And then those that can afford and those that do have the resources to maintain reusable cloth pads and underwear, we want to urge them to use those more, because by them using the sustainable products, it'll eliminate the pollution that's often found in lower income communities.
And then another thing, a big focus of ours, so like our friends in lower income communities, they might be able to use the disposable pads, but we know the people, like our friends in deeper poverty, they unfortunately might not have access to do that. So like Nayanka was saying, we want to give them disposable products, but our mission is not to give them disposable products that are filled with bad chemicals and things that are just like not fair, just to get like the cheapest stuff for our communities that can't afford pads and tampons. So a big thing we also focus on is environmental justice, which is like that idea that everyone deserves the right and access to good products that are good for your body, good for the environment. It sucks that they like cost more and stuff. So that's why we try to focus our efforts, like our donations right now, we're only buying like good quality pads and tampons for our friends that we're donating to, and we're trying not to give them ones that have bleach in it and things like that.
Yeah, and I think another thing that Zoe and I really focus on too is intentionality and education. I think a lot of the times with trying to help others, sometimes we forget to actually, you know, speak to those that actually need the help and consider them in our efforts. We forget that before you hand someone resources, that they actually need education to understand how those resources work and why they should trust you. And so Zoe and I are consistently always talking and, you know, like reaching out to those in our community, even people like even our leaders and stuff like that, and having conversations that are intentional so that our efforts are intentional, so that we're actually, you know, helping others and like being practical and realistic with our solutions.
That's great. That's great. We make some of our reusable menstrual pads right here in the United States with groups of volunteers that come together often. We call them MoonBees. We're the MoonCatcher project. So we call them MoonBees. Thank your grandmother's quilting bee or a sewing bee. And we do get a lot of students from colleges and high schools, Girl Scouts, you know, a lot of younger people. And we try through them to talk about, you know, when we get disposable products, yes, let's get the ones that aren't filled with chemicals. So we do that, but boy, I just wish there was some other way to get a reusable product to them. We've talked to various menstrual cup places, and I really understand their concern. They say if you're dealing with a homeless shelter, you're not dealing with the same people constantly. So it's very hard to do the education.
Actually, I can tell you, when we've talked to the groups that help homeless people in the U.S., they have straight out told us, like, no, we don't want menstrual cups because they have nowhere that they can boil it. Because menstrual cups are great, right? Because they're reusable for 10 years. 10 years, you can use the same cup. And you only have to boil it once a month. Like, even when you take it in, you put it in and out, all you need is clean hands. You don't even have to wash it between that. But the problem is that 5 minutes you need to boil it. We've been told straight out, like, no, we don't even want them. Like, our homeless women won't use them. But like homeless shelters, we have donated some to, because they have facilities like that. But we have tried to give to those groups, and we've just been flat out rejected for that. So
yeah,
that's part of it too.
At Isle, we've had a sort of a hybrid model. Since we are a commercial vendor of these products, we have used kind of a sort of a fundraising and education model, wherein we have led drives of disposable products, and as we encourage you know, our customers to switch, we ask them to make a donation, and we, you know, do a give back around that, or we match it. The other project that we are involved in was a lot of relationship building and education with our local vulnerable service providers. We worked to sort of discuss with them what they needed and what they wanted. And for some of our organizations, they work with people who are in crisis, who need a disposable product. That's where they're at right now. And just part of our work is to make sure that they have that product, that we are partnering with local agencies so that the kit is supportive, like, you know, seeing if there's a local chocolatier who will throw in a little bit of chocolate to make it just like a nicer experience. When we've moved out beyond that, when we've talked to people who are working in transition homes and people who are not, well, they're in crisis, that I don't want to minimize what they're going through, but we had a lot of feedback from their clients, those who they worked with, that they needed an experience that taught them to honor their body. And what you said, Erin, really resonated with me. Like, that's really what we hear all the time from our customers, that, you know, they need to honor their bodies and find an experience. Like, you know, if a trans youth is dysphoric, can we get them a pair of our boxer briefs? Like, for moms who are in transition shelters, they love our cup. And what we have is expertise in these products, and we can partner to donate these products. We have as part of our sustainability, we have a zero waste policy in the office. So everything that comes into the office, nothing exits as garbage unless legally required to as by law. So we compost, we recycle. Any excess fabric is made into other products or somehow diverted from the waste stream. Even the silicone offcuts from our cups go to become medical lubricant. So nothing, as best we can, doesn't always go perfectly. Nothing comes into our building and without like leaving as something else. And part of that's really informed our donation model, because where we found a stream for these donations was when things exited the factory that needed to be mended, we mended them and donated them. So because our pads are medical devices, we have FDA regulations. We can't, something that would exited the factory damaged can't meet that FDA regulation and can't be sold, but it can be donated. So we mend it and it goes to a donation stream. So that's one of our models that we found to supply that, and we supply that with education, and also I would say we also supply it with listening. I think the number one thing I have learned in my sort of 4 years at this job is that I have to listen to the people who I'm donating to, because they will tell you what they need. They're very clear. And then it's on me to help meet that need.
I had something that we've done a few times is if someone is buying like a full set, or we know just from talking to them, because we're very relationship focused, that they're not going to need disposables anymore, we'll generally send them an envelope and the information for where to send the rest of their disposables. Sending them the shipping part is harder. Like, it's easiest if they have enough that we can send them their order in a priority box, then they can empty it, put their disposables in, put a different sticker on, and send it back out. And just relocating those disposables from the people who have the stability to switch to reusables to the folks who don't have the stability right now. Also, in terms of the reusable options and which ones are most flexible, we have liners that are just cotton all the way through. They're very light and they can be washed in a sink and rolled up in a towel to dry out. It's not, if you're keeping all your clothes in a backpack all day, it's only going to get so dry, and you do have to have that small towel. But if people are backpacking, if people are living in dorms and don't have access to a washing machine, some people can still use these liners. And that's one of the things we kept in mind when designing the liners, because a fair amount of folks wear liners every day just for personal moisture management daily. So having those be easy to turn around and easy to wander without a lot of time invested is part of how we built those.
Absolutely. Thank you all for speaking to that. I think Amy had a question for everyone.
Yeah, so First, I wanted to say earlier, I love what you said about kind of the stigma around periods. And I feel like that's such a big issue, not just with menstruation, but obviously with like sustainable products.
Mhm.
And for the next question, maybe Jane can start us off and then we can kind of work our way around like with the last question. What was, excuse me, what exactly inspired you all to take action in this way?
I would say we were inspired to take action because ISLE is like an eco-feminist activism project with a business model wrapped around it, right? Like we started out selling these pads because it gave us an income stream to, fund our revolution. So we were convinced by the efficacy of our products. So what inspired us to get into this was a real understanding of the period and like the people's stigma around periods as being a root cause of reproductive inequality. And stigma about periods does not exist by itself. It's systematic. It's in an ecosystem that also leads to trans folks not being able to access healthcare, people not be able to get the reproductive healthcare they need, including abortions, people not knowing how to have safer sex. All of these things are rooted in a perception that sexuality is dirty and should be something you should be ashamed of. So, I mean, we always say, like, we don't say feminine hygiene because not all, periods are not just for women, and also periods are not dirty. So we say period care or menstrual care. And that's why we got into this, was just because we were a group of people whose lives were transformed by switching to reusables. And we became, everyone at ISLE is a feminist. So we became convinced that we could make real change if we were able to do our own thing, go around government programs and really talk to people directly. So, and that's how we got into it.
Ellie, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I would love to. Our organization is about 10 years old, and when I first heard about the problem of girls dropping out of school because they had no way of dealing with their period, I was so shocked. I mean, I just couldn't even believe that. It hadn't occurred to me. Now that seems really strange to me because it's like what I think about, 24 hours a day. But the idea that girls would have to go home and have to stop their education and would have to, in many cases, be married off to somebody that they didn't even know at a very young age and start to have babies when they're babies themselves and just continue the cycle of poverty and to not fulfill their goals in life and become the women that they have a right to become. I just was horrified by this. I just couldn't even believe it. And I thought, well, maybe I can do something. And the weird thing about it is I was 58 years old when this happened, when I had this, like, I didn't know that morning when I woke up that that's what was going to happen to me that day. And I had long since stopped bleeding. And so to take on this, this whole issue of menstruation when I was no longer menstruating myself, just, I mean, I was shocked by what was happening to my life, but it was so important to me because it's such a issue about who we are and what we have a right to become. And all those little girls that had to go home and stop their lives because of something that's normal and natural, it just made me crazy. So I started this, and I've always been an environmentalist. I mean, when you talk about zero waste, we're like huge into this. We don't throw away anything. Our little scraps and threads and everything go to a rug pad company through the city mission. So the city mission first makes money selling it to them, and everything gets recycled or reused or whatever. But I wanted that for girls everywhere. I wanted something that was environmentally friendly, something that was incredibly comfortable, something that was easy to use, that would grow with them so that one size fits all, that could be worn without underwear, and would keep that girl in school, or at least it would not be the reason that she had to drop out of school. There may be another reason, but it wasn't going to be that. And it was something that we could make happen for very, very low cost, and we could completely eliminate the problem for that girl. And we've done it for tens of thousands of girls in the world now. And I just feel like, you know, I guess that was my mission. I guess that's why I'm here.
That's so inspiring. I love that so much. Yeah. Zoe and Nayanka, do you want to talk a little bit about like your initiatives together and like how did you guys start BloodyBtchs?
I feel like my story's like really weird. Like it didn't even start off as this. It started off like I was a sophomore in college and I was on my period and I was like having cramps and I was broke and I was like, oh my God, I was like, I feel like no one talks about like periods enough, and like I feel like we're like there's like people deal with their periods differently. Like some people have worse symptoms and like cramps and stuff like that. So like I was like, oh my God, I was just like, I should like make a box. I was like talking with a friend and they were like, you should like make something that like caters to like women and people that bleed that are on their periods like that. And I was like, oh, like that's cool. So I started making like these, I tried out these like boxes and I did like a test run on them. And then I like met Zoe like the following semester and we had like a business class, and like my business class like always liked my idea, so they made me pitch, but it wasn't fully developed because it was literally just a random thought that I had and I was still working with. And then when I met Zoe, it just grew into more, and like during that whole time of me like experimenting with it, I was like researching about health disparities in the Black community and period poverty in our lower income communities. And then Zoe kind of brought the more sustainability aspect, and like literally for like the past year and a half, we've been just like combing out like all the like rough ends, like and like developing what we want to do and where we want to take this. And it was just in September where we came up with BloodyBtchs and like all the initiatives that we want to do with it, and it's been fun.
Yeah.
I love that so much. It's just so cool to me. I love seeing people like collaborate and all of that. Erin, do you want to talk a little bit about like what inspired your initiatives and Bleed Geeks?
Yeah, so Ezra, my co-founder, came to me. They have more experience with cloth pads than I did. I had been cloth diapered before, but I hadn't made the switch yet. And they were working in this crunchy granola store, and they were selling menstrual pads to folks, and they had people come back in and they weren't happy with the mass market pads. They were swampy, they weren't, or they had sensitivities to different products. And they came to me like, my degree is in costume design. So they're like, can you make a pad that can be water resistant, but can still breathe? And I'm like, let's see. So we spent a whole year on it, trying different materials, trying them in different orders, trying them in different sizes. That was just to get to our standard. I think I've got a standard. Yeah, just to get to our standard, which I initially came up with a pocket design because I like things that are needlessly complicated. But I was convinced that all-in-ones is really where we should start. And we haven't gotten back to the pocket things. Like, people know how to take a pad, put it in their underwear, bleed on it, then it's done. Like, so we've been sticking with that model so far. But from there, we couldn't do anything else after we thought about the scale of the difference. As of right now, Bleed Geeks is on course to have diverted 8 million disposable menstrual products. So roughly each menstruating person uses about 16,000 disposable menstrual products in their life. We've had 1,000 sales, even if like half of them were the same person. That's 500 people. Even when I was just thinking about one person switching at a time, I could not make that physical volume of a difference on the face of the earth and the rest of my life in any other way. And I just cannot see myself doing anything else with my life. I want to spend all of my time serving menstruating people and empowering our lives to not be subject to spending too much money on unhealthy, non-sustainable, uncomfortable objects. Like, being able to put money back in folks' pockets, especially when both I and Ezra are non-binary. We serve the queer community most directly. And we also do most of our in-person events. We go to cons because we don't want to preach to the choir at granola events. So we're going to MagFest, we're going to OtaCon, we're going to these big events where no one really showed up for this, and having conversations about like, hey, do you bleed and like the earth? And with like all kinds of people, and we've gotten some great reactions from people who were just not into it, and then other people that are like, I can talk about this. I can talk about this and it's okay. Like some people have about just cried having someone that wasn't their doctor that they could talk to. And so yeah, just making things more fun, making things just safe to talk about, getting out there and having these conversations with people. It's all so important. I really couldn't do anything else.
That is so inspiring. I love that so much. Like, that warms my heart. Nadja, do you want to talk a little bit about why you started your activism?
Yeah, sure. I just what Erin said reminded me of, so for my other job, or back in the US, I used to work with gang outreach, and I would talk to these gang boys about periods all the time because I love CouldYou and I love CouldYou Cup so much. And like, I know some of them were just like, I would rather go back to gang life than hear more about periods. But I also know that some of them were actually like, they started being more open about it, and they'd be like, talk about it, or they would mention it, or they would post funny period memes on like Instagram. And I just love that. And it was just so amazing to me that these kids who are like grew up in gang life, or they had gotten out of gang, or like things like that, and now they're talking about periods. But so I got involved with CouldYou, and I had no idea. Like, I was so ignorant about what a big issue period poverty really is. And like I know that like in Africa, the official numbers say 1 in 10 girls. Like, our numbers are 6, 7 out of 10 girls miss school every month while they're on their period. Which is like, I mean, in some of the communities in Ghana where we work, that number is like 90 to 100%. Every single month they miss 5 days on average because they're on their period, and like they often have to drop out. And it's just like, so it's such a natural thing that shouldn't, like, nothing should stop you from getting an education if you want one, but something as natural as periods definitely shouldn't be a barrier. So, and just like, I love CouldYou, I love the mission and everything that they stand for and what we do. So like, all of that is just why.
Awesome. It's so nice to hear everyone's like inspiration stories. It's so fun. To kind of bring the just a note, we want to be respectful of people's time. So if you need to head out at any point, that's totally fine. But I'm glad that the conversation is like really in depth, and I really appreciate that. But one of our next questions was, when we think about menstrual equity, a lot of people don't necessarily tie sustainability and like environmental movements with like the menstrual movement and thinking about these issues. So why is it important for people who care about feminism, menstrual justice, bodily autonomy, etc., to also care about the environment and sustainability, and to see them as a cohesive issue as opposed to just one? Would anyone like to speak to that? It's kind of a big question, but
I can start. I think, okay, this is a very loaded question. I think there's more, I think this issue isn't single dimensional. And I think even us that are on the forefront of this issue are still very much figuring that out. And so thinking of people that don't know about period poverty, that aren't necessarily aware of legislation that is behind menstrual equity, they're not going to necessarily look at the environmental aspect of it. Because even me, like when I look at period poverty and I'm looking at menstrual equity, the first thing that comes to my mind is the financial aspect and the legislation aspect behind it. I'm not thinking about environmental issues. And then, people that aren't knowledgeable or that's just not their concern right now, because their concern right now is, I need this product for them to be clean or whatever it is. They're not, environmental's not your first thought. But I think for those of us that do have the resources, we should start to think more about the environmental aspects of it. And I think we are becoming more in a society where we're learning about sustainability and the impacts of it, which is why, like I said, like me and Zoe, we're trying to urge people that can afford and have the resources to use sustainable efforts, to make more sustainable efforts, because by us doing that and using reusable products, we're helping those that are closer to areas that are mostly polluted, like more urban communities, lower income communities. So it's like, by doing this, you're helping them out, whether you're not directly giving them something, but you're saving their life because they're in an area where the air might be cleaner now, or the environment might be cleaner. So I think it's just, we need to start looking at this more of how everything we do contributes, like in a cycle, like all our efforts literally just contribute in a cycle. And I think it also comes with a mentality that we need to have. I think we live in a very, well, for those in the US, we have a very individualist based society and mindset. So we're very concerned about what we do and how it affects us, and we don't realize how it affects those around us and those outside of our, whether it's our class or race or community, because this is a socioeconomic issue, it's a financial issue, it's a legislation issue, it's an education issue, it's more than one issue, and we need to start looking at it like that.
I can jump in here because I actually have to jump off really quickly, but you are so right, Nayanka. But I think we often have been using this saying at ISLE when we're talking to legislators, which is, the earth is the reproductive system that you're involved in, which is to say that a lot of this work around donation and getting product to people who need it, regardless of what kind of product it is because we have a system where we've assigned menstrual management to personal responsibility. And when you think about it, when you go to a bathroom, we don't seem to have a problem providing clean hot water or toilet paper or soap. And we're in the middle of a health crisis where hot water and soap are critical to maintaining public health and public, mobility, because we need to be able to wash our hands. And that is something, as a society, we've decided is a collective responsibility, making sure that hot water comes through the pipes. And I think what really strikes me is that the women's washroom is a weird construct, but if you go to a traditional women's washroom, it's better, it's set up to serve a cis man better than it is a menstruating human. And that is because we design and we have structured our society in a way not to serve menstruators and to assume that people are having periods all the time, which they are. And I think when you get to we really approach it from the end user point, where we have these people who come to us saying, we need products and we need, sustainable answers and we need all these things. But the two movements are connected because they're coming from the same root, where we ignore menstruation at our peril, right? And I think that's kind of where we balance. It's been so good to spend time with you. I'm going to put my email in the chat. So if any of you want to reach out, I would love to hear from any of you and hear more about what you're doing. That'd be awesome. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jane, for coming. Your insight is so especially appreciated. So yeah. Would anyone else kind of like to speak to that question of why should we think about the environmental movement and the menstrual equity movement in the same light, or why we should combine the two?
I would. Primarily, climate change will affect marginalized communities. It's affecting them now. It's going to affect them first. It's going to affect them harder than anyone else. When we're looking at justice, and as Nayanka was saying, environmental justice is a very, very relevant thing. BloodyBtchs is based in Baltimore. Everything that goes into that should be going to the landfill, some of that's going to go to the incinerators. It's going to be burned, and Ezra and her family have to breathe it. incinerators are bad enough, but the less waste we have, the less useful they are. Here in Maryland, we passed a bill to put free menstrual products in all of our schools so that nobody's missing school. Our governor vetoed it this morning, but there's so much progress that's being made there. Just making sure that women and girls and menstruators are getting a full education is a step forward for sustainability, for drawdown of greenhouse gases. Speaking of drawdown, Project Drawdown has this great itemized list of the most impactful things we could do that are doable, and by which we could get greenhouse gases down to a pre-industrial level. And I believe number 7 is educate women and girls, because we have such a large portion of our team. It's number 6. I know what, I think right next to it is family planning. So I get those
7 is family planning, right?
Right. So we've got so much of our team that doesn't have all their resources at hand because menstruation supplies are not accessible. So yeah, I think they're inextricable.
Absolutely.
And I think the numbers for how much like disposable products are thrown away in a year is 7 million pounds of menstrual products, hygiene products are thrown away in a year. And that's a lot. Like, we did this comparison and it's like 15 Statues of Liberties. It's 650 Ferris wheels. That's how much in weight that is thrown away in a year, just in disposable products. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an insane amount. Would anyone else like to speak to that question or have any additional thoughts about that?
Just seems to me that the basic thing we should be thinking about is this planet, is this earth, this precious home that we so violate. And I think one of the really amazing things about this particular time, this pandemic, as difficult it is for many, many people, and as anxiety provoking as it is, we're also seeing things we haven't seen in years. We're seeing mountains, we're seeing the bottoms of lakes, we're seeing, animals in places where they used to be. We're healing, and it's going to make everything better in terms of us breathing, our health, if we could only learn something from this, wouldn't that be great? And part of it is not to be polluting, not to be throwing those little plastic tampon holders in the trash, in the ocean. We find them everywhere. And all the other disposable things that we do. So I think all of this, even though we're all talking about menstruation, what we're really talking about is the environment. It's about where we live and taking care of it so that we are all healthier.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you all. Oh, Zoe, would you like to speak?
Oh, I was just saying I love that. Yeah. that was good. But yeah, another, I guess to write off of that, the throwing away the pads and tampons and things like that, it also takes like, I think it was like 500 to 800 years to actually even decompose. And that's so long. Like, that's not even, the United States is like younger than that. So,
and while they're decomposing, they're like emitting these harmful chemicals like cancer chemicals known to produce cancer. And
yeah,
yes, thank you.
And not only that, but then there's the production of cotton and things that are used in pads and tampons, and the production of cotton alone uses so much water. So that's another thing. There's so many, it's all one cycle. And I think it's important to think of every single aspect, even though there are so many little trickle down effects. But it's great that we are able to do that here and kind of talk through some of these issues.
Yeah, just for sake of time, I think we're gonna skip over to some questions from people who have been listening. I know that, people scheduling wise in terms of all of this. Some people can't make it, but we will be posting everything on our social media so people can look back on it. But does anyone in the audience have any questions for some of the panelists or any discussion things, or, you know?
Yeah, I actually have a question for everyone on the panel. So for those of you who are as feminists, which I'm gonna assume is most of you, how has like your background in feminism impacted how you were able to like shift your, I guess, your outlook or your mindset towards menstruation? Because at least speaking from personal experience, I know that I've not always been able to view my period in a positive light. Just I've seen it as an inconvenience for so long. And it's taken me this long, you know, to be able to view menstruation as something other than, you know, an inconvenience and dirty. So I guess, how would you guys describe your journeys with that kind of realization or change?
I can go. I think for me, I don't know, I guess I never really saw my period as like a dirty thing. I feel like, okay, let me say this. I feel like there's like the group of people that like talk about menstruation in this like very flowery way, and it's like a way to like be empowering and make us feel more comfortable in our like in menstruation and like be more open about period poverty, but it's not realistic. I think it's important to be aware that there are problems that come with menstruation. Not everyone's cycle is the same. Not everyone has the same flow. People feel pain differently. Like there's cramps. These are very, very real things. Period insecurity is very much real. And that's okay. It's natural. Like you're entitled to feel that way. But it's also like, yes, it's like a beautiful experience because not everyone can experience it. It's just, I don't know, like it's just like being able to acknowledge like there are like the ugly parts of it, but it's very much real and it's very much natural, apart from the stigma, if that makes sense. I hope that answered your question, kind of.
Absolutely, thank you.
It took me a while to come up with something. I would say my feelings about it changed much in the way that just being embodied. Bodies are gross and weird and in the butt sometimes, but they're also amazing. They're our very own meat robot suit that we get to ride around in and experience everything. That doesn't mean we have to like the sucky parts, but we can see it as a part of the whole. Yeah. I think I have so many friends that have endometriosis, and a lot of our customers have endometriosis, and the amount of pain and discomfort, as well as just being erased from the world of period experience and just be like, that's too much pain. No, I don't want to hear about that. Like the discomfort and straight up trauma that can come with that is part of that whole thing. I'm very lucky that I've not had to have that much pain since I was younger. Also, my period has gotten a lot better of an experience. Not everyone has that experience as they age, but it worked out for me in that. But I also was raised by a feminist. Even when I was using disposables, my mom started me on OBs, and like they have no applicator because my mom sees no problem in touching your own body. And when I was first given an applicator thing and expected to use this device, I was utterly confused. And so I think that thankfully I got a very healthy introduction to it. But I think the discomfort is part of the experience.
I did not know about applicators until I moved to the US when I was 21, and I thought they were terrifying. I'm like, what is this? This is so, what is this? I was so scared. I was like, I would try to find tampons, or I would bring like big bags of tampons from Sweden, like every time I went home to visit, because I was so scared of these applicators. And like your question, like, I think that I've always been comfortable talking about my periods. Like I will, but I'm not always like happy with it. Like there are days when I'm like in pain and I hate it and I'm so miserable, and I'm just like, I will come into that office with these gang kids and I'll be like, you know what? Women shouldn't be making equal pay. They should be making more pay because they have to go to work while they're on their periods. and all of these boys are just like, oh God, and then they like avoid me for a few, and they're like scared of me for a few days, and I love it. But other than that, like, I don't know. In Sweden, people are, I think, more open about menstruation, so I was never really like understood how much of a stigma there really was, or I just ignored it. I don't know which one.
Yeah. I don't know. I think part of it is your age, because
Well, I'm 31. I mean, so I'm not.
yeah, part of it is your age. You're
Yeah.
younger, so a lot of younger people, younger from me, are really, really comfortable talking about periods, and it's fabulous. I love being around, people in college and high school, and they just look at me like saying, "What do you mean people have a hard time saying this out loud?" I mean, I get lots of people that come to help sew, and I always give a little talk during the time that we're together, and I always say, I'm going to give you some homework. I said, and I'm very often talking to rooms filled with middle-aged or older women. I do get some men, I do get a bunch of students, but I get a lot of older women. And I say, and your homework tonight is to go home, to say the word menstruation out loud, to say it preferably in mixed company. And I promise you, you won't die. And they're just like, really? We can say this, we can do this. But when I say this if I go to talk to a group of college kids, they just say, well, why wouldn't we say that? Which is fabulous. But you need to remember that there's a whole lot of other people out there that are still really nervous about it. For me, it was no big deal. I mean, you ask, how did I make the transition between being a feminist and then make the shift to talking about menstruation? I just always thought that we should be able to do it. I don't know why I thought that, but I did, even though I'm from a little different generation. But I love seeing what's happening, that when this younger generation from me is really way more comfortable with this. And that's the way it should be. It's a little different in other countries, I've noticed, but they're willing to try it out. So it's really exciting. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else have any other questions or thoughts or things that they'd like to add?
Can I add something?
Mm-hmm.
So I mentioned that we're doing an event on May 28th. It's going to be a virtual event. And we're trying to have a bunch of different people just write in a story. I can send you guys exactly what it is. But if you guys would be willing to share a story about menstruation or how you got into it or anything like that, that would be super appreciated. And then we're going to show it and share it to a bunch of people and just talk about, I can give you more information, but just talk about sometime you've been embarrassed about your period, or when a partner, friend, stranger, someone has done something just really great for you during your period or anything like that. That would be amazing.
We call those monologues.
The what?
We call those menstrual monologues.
Yeah, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can share different information that everyone has in emails that we send out later to stay connected and that kind of stuff. So yeah, anything else that people would like to add or questions?
Thanks for sharing your guys' stories. It's inspiring to see all the change that people are making. So that's awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining and everyone to listen and just kind of start this conversation. And especially thank you to Ashlyn, Amy, and Veronica for doing a lot of work on prepping this panel and all of the events that the Bleed Shamelessly team and the Gender Equity Association team is doing. They work really hard and I'm very appreciative of them and all of the panelists who came. Thank you so much everyone for coming. I am super happy and excited to think about different things that people brought up. I was taking notes throughout it. So yeah, thank you so much for coming. Yeah, everyone have.
If you could share those notes, that would be amazing if you'd be willing to share some of them because I was not taking notes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Stuff. Yeah. Okay, thank you everyone for coming, and have a great rest of your day. Have a good start to your weekend. Yeah, thank you again for coming. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.